From the Pacific coast of Canada, this is Pacific.ca. Featuring this time, political scientist Dr. R.B. Herath, speaking about his latest book titled A New Beginning for Humankind, a recipe for lasting peace on Earth. You are Mr. R.B. Herath.
That's correct.
And
Yes.
you have written extensively about the history of war in the world and the ineffectiveness of the United Nations resolutions. Now, the title of your latest book is A New Beginning for Humankind.
Yes.
What is new in your recipe and your prescription to prevent a catastrophic World War III and to create a culture of just peace?
Yes. Pedro, now, currently, we are trying to prevent the calamity lying in wait, the global calamity lying in wait, by resorting to techniques of power balancing and sometimes even disregarding the United Nations and its mandate, and also with no action to address the causes and conditions that keep on building the global tension.
Mm-hmm.
In contrast, mine is a twofold approach to reduce global tension by addressing those causes and conditions, and also to further strengthen the existing global checks and balances where necessary.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a classic difference here.
Mm-hmm.
Where I also have special plans for lasting peace, because when you mentioned just peace, I think what you meant was lasting peace. In addition,
yeah, I said just peace because peace by coercion is not really peace. So I said specifically just peace. Peace that is just for everyone. Yeah.
Absolutely, you are absolutely agree with you. Now, all the present global initiatives, as I see, they go only as far as prevention of wars. But time and again, history has shown us that that's not a recipe for lasting peace. World War I, World War II, World War III, World War IV, it will go on like that. But taking the global, my approach takes the global peace initiative to a new height.
And in a few words, what is that approach? What is this new approach?
This new approach for lasting peace is a new beginning, what I call the new beginning for humankind, with the transformation of the present world, resting or even trusting on the reason of power balancing, and so on, to one of relief, resilience, and lasting peace, resting or trusting on the power of reason instead of reason of power.
Okay, so, the power of reason instead of the power of reason instead of reason of power.
Yeah.
So that means discussion, not fighting.
That's right. That's right. It's not a matter of power balancing. It's a matter of listening to reason.
Now, let me tell you something. The United Nations has passed resolutions requiring all nations to gradually get rid of all weapons of mass destruction. Also, in 1962, the Soviet Union and the USA, America, initiated under Kennedy, 1962, if you remember, initiated a UN proposal to dismantle all military forces of the world. The accord between Russia and the United States was named after the negotiators of this treaty, which was called Sorin and McCloy. And whatever happened to this UN resolution, and specifically that Soviet American agreement of apparently 58 states put the proposal to the United Nations? Do you know what happened to it?
The UN in fact, has no clear strategy to reduce or destroy weapons of mass destruction. In fact, not even to the extent of the provisions kept under the League of Nations, before Second World War. For example, I want to explain this to you. The Article 8 of the League of Nations, or the League of Nations Covenant, required reducing national armaments to the lowest point, consistent with national safety needs and the enforcement of international obligations by common actions. UN Charter clearly falls short of such a set procedure for the reduction of national armaments. It only talks about the establishment of a system for regulation of armament, not reduction, regulation of armaments, Article 26, if you remember, and the possible disarmament, Article 47. This simply has not worked.
It has not worked, you say?
Yes, the regulation has failed. They are reducing here, there, you are right, but this regulation is not going far enough to make the world safer. So, instead of some specific set procedure under the League of Nations, we are talking about a regulation without any set procedure and targets. So we are not in a better place. We are in a worse place than even the Second World War in that regard.
I hear that they are talking about some arms trade treaty, and apparently that treaty is basically authorizing certain kind of trade of certain weapons. In other words, if a nation decides to ship some weapons, they have to prove that those weapons are not going to kill anyone. But it's kind of ironic that why do we make weapons if it's not to kill?
And absolutely, and also the weapons of mass destruction and humans, they don't go together. We are talking about our self-destruction. And also, some countries having weapons of mass destruction and telling other people you can't produce them doesn't show enough psychological or legal or any ethical, argument as to why they should not, why others also should not build them.
Yeah, R.B., tell me something. Globally, how would you reform the United Nations, or what would you replace it with? If we were to abandon the United Nations, what would you replace it with?
Now, Pedro, as you may have heard from some even heads of states, it's an open secret that the United Nations is already an outdated organization. It was built for a certain purpose at a certain time, for seen and foreseen purposes. But now it's outdated.
So how would you reform it?
Now, you see, for an example, there are major concerns in the world today about the structure and the decision-making processes of the UN and regulations and disarmament, as I talked to you about. Not even the non-compliance of the member states. It's very sad to see that. And main culprits are the powerful nations in the world and funding arrangements and UN's military capability and even prevention of unilateral global policing. The UN only says, we did not sanction these wars. It's a system that does that good enough to prevent the next world war. So I think it's completely outdated. We need to reform. Now, reform can take place according to the United Nations Charter, it spells out and says you need 2/3 majority of the member states, including all permanent members who have the veto power. So you can try that and expect all the 5 members also to buy what we are talking about. Hopefully, we hope that they rise to the occasion, step up to the plate, and do the right thing at the right time before things get worse. So, but if there is any conflict, if there's any difficulty, I think all the peace-loving nations must unite and form their own organizations on the lines of the United Nations, but closing all loopholes and so on, just to see how we build the United Nations in place of the League of Nations.
Yeah, excuse me for a minute. So what I hear you saying then is that you would reform the United Nations, but by having resolutions enforced by 2/3 of the membership, rather than by the Security Council, where 5 members have veto power. Is that what you're saying, that would you reform?
No, what I'm saying is that according to the UN Charter, if we want to reform any piece of it, we need 2/3 majority in the General Assembly, including all the 5 permanent members. All the 5 permanent members must agree to that resolution.
Yeah, what do you think about this veto power of the 5 nations?
Well, I feel it's outdated now. It doesn't belong more. Now you can see one nation, either China or Russia, is trying to control all the effort the global community is making to make things happen in some places like Syria. It is not a good setup. I think there we need to build another system
with more input from the membership, from all the member nations.
And you can see if it is one nation, or one of the 5 permanent members, maybe representing 5%, 10%, and all together represent only about 25% of the global population.
Yeah.
So even if 95% population wants something, the global population of 5% representing country, one veto country, can stop that. That is not a good system. What I'm saying is, even with 2/3, you cannot do it if even one of the Security Council permanent members is not willing to accept that.
But is that fair?
That is completely unfair, in my view.
Yeah.
And
okay.
right now, for the present world, it may have had some meaning at the time they formed the United Nations, but today it doesn't make any sense. It's a very negative thing in the whole system.
So
what I'm saying is, in trying to change, if something like that happens, stands on our way, all the peace-loving nations in the world must form something else, alternative body, similar to the United Nations, clearing all these loopholes and drawbacks, and then just the way how we built the United Nations in place of the League of Nations.
Would the adoption of the Department of Peace Initiative, which is Bill C-373, establish a non-violence means of conflict resolution? Would it establish a non-violence means of resolution of conflict?
Pedro, in the first place, I feel it's a step in the right direction. And Canada, as we all know, is a founding member of the Global Alliance for Ministries and Departments for Peace. Also, we all know what a great name Canada has in the world in peacemaking and peace building. So with this initiative, Canada is showing some leadership to the rest of the world.
If it passes, it hasn't been adopted yet.
Yeah, yes, I will definitely contribute. It will definitely contribute to the growing national and global efforts to make the world a better place for everyone. We as Canadians, I think we all should promote and support this initiative.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it is something, it's an opportunity we should never miss. We should never ever miss. All the parties in the parliament must rally round and then pass
Yeah.
this unanimously.